Hello, everyone. Today we'll talk about Chapter 6, Supply, Demand, and Government Policies. Actually, this chapter is still the application of Chapter 4, okay? We will still talk about demand and supply model in this chapter. So first, let's see what we will learn in this chapter. In this chapter, we actually try to look for answers for following three questions. The first one, what are the price ceilings and price floor? And what are examples of these two price control? For the second part, we would like to talk about how to distinguish the binding and not binding impact of the price control. And then the last part, we would like to talk about how do price ceilings and price floor affect the market outcomes. Okay, so actually in this chapter we involved government. Before in chapter 4, when we talk about demand and supply, only involve sellers and buyers, right? We never have the third party. We never have government intervene. But in this chapter, we would like to say if the market now has government to intervene, what happens? So the first, what are the price controls? So price controls is actually the government attempt to set or manipulate price through government involvement in the market. And there are several types of the price controls, and in this chapter we'll focus on two major parts, okay? So the first one could be the price ceiling. So what is price ceiling? Price ceiling is for government to legally establish the maximum price for the products. Okay, so government establish the maximum price that you can charge for the product. This is what we call price ceiling. For the price floor, is just the opposite. Okay, so for government is legally establish the minimum price for a good or service. So you can see the price ceiling should be the maximum price of the good or services that's legally established. And price floor will be legally establish the minimum price for the goods and services. So let's first look at the market for apartments, okay? So this is the example we will use for price ceiling. In the markets for apartments, we have the price on the vertical axis, we have the quantity on horizontal axis, okay? Originally, this is the demand curve and this is the supply curve. They intersect at one point, right? And that point will show in the equilibrium price for apartment will be $800 per month, okay? And then the equilibrium quantity of the apartments in the markets will be 300, okay? So this will be the equilibrium parts. However, if the market price now is at $300, do you think the market price here will be stable at $300? Look at the price at $300, okay? So look at this graph. This is the quantity, this is the price, demand, supply. They intersect at one point. This is the equilibrium point, right? 800. And then we have 300, sorry, 300 units available. Now the market price reduced to $300, okay? So this one, $300. What you need to do, please draw a horizontal line across it. And then use this horizontal line, you can find two intersection points. One is at this part, okay? Point A is on the supply side. So this will be, if the price at $300, only 200 apartments will be available in the markets, right? And when you draw a horizontal line across $300, you will also have another point on the demand curve, right? So for the demand side, you can find out if the price is just $300, then there are 400 units will be needed for this apartment, right? So at $300, we notice the quantity demand equal 400. However, quantity supply equal 200. What happens? It will result in a shortage, right? The shortage will be 400 subtract 200 equal 200. So if there is no government intervene, when the market price is $300, the market has a shortage. So when market has shortage, what happens? the supplier of the apartments, they can increase the rent, right? Because they know there are more people would like to rent the apartments. So for the suppliers of the apartments, they can increase the price, right? Increase the rent, and which will when they increase the rent, what happens? You will reduce the demand, right? Reduce the demand, and then there are more suppliers of their apartments would like to offer their apartments in the markets because now the rent might increase. Therefore, without government intervene, the price, or we say the rent, okay, the rents will increase. When the rents increase, it will increase the supply of the apartment, reduce the demand of the apartments, right? And then finally, what happens until you go back to the equilibrium, right? This is when there is no government intervene. Okay, no government intervene. $300 per month for the rent will be not a stable point. It will goes up until it reach the equilibrium point. Okay, the result in a shortage, and the market will forces the demand to decrease and the supply to increase. And then finally, okay, it will go back to the equilibrium points. So this is one case without government intervene. Okay. Still similar things, okay, in the apartment markets. Now things changes. We notice the market price, the equilibrium price is still at $800, right? PQ, demand, supply, original, okay? This is still $800, the equilibrium price. 300 units will be rented. Now the market price is at $1,000, okay, for the rent. Similar, okay, please draw a horizontal line across it. So when you draw a horizontal line across it, you will have 2 points, okay? This will be point A. So you can see point A is on a demand curve. So you can see if the rent increased to $1,000, 200, only 200 apartments will be rented, right? However, now the apartment price is high, so you can find out another point on the supply curve. 400 apartments will be available in the markets. So you can see when the market price is at $1,000, quantity demand will just equal 200. Okay, however, quantity supply equal 400, which will result in surplus, right? So surplus will equal quantity supply subtract quantity demand equal 200 units, right? So when a market has surplus, we notice this $1,000 for rent is also not a stable point because now the market has surplus. The suppliers of the apartments, they try to reduce the rent, right? They will reduce the rent to attract more consumers, to attract more people to rent the apartments, right? So the price here will goes down. When price goes down, we notice the quantity demand will increase and quantity supply will decrease, and which finally, what happens? Also go back to equilibrium, right? So you can see without government intervene, without government intervene, through some time periods, either the price is less than $800 or the price is above $800, the markets will finally go back to equilibrium, okay, by take times. All right, so this is what we have learned in chapter 4. However, sometimes, or as far as we know, in order to help the low income people can rent the apartments, the government will put some price control on rent, right? So how the price ceiling can affect the market outcome. So let's assume now government impose a price ceiling on the market price for their apartments. So The purpose for the government impose the price ceiling on the apartments is try to help the low income people can rent the apartments, okay? So when the government imposed the price ceiling, so let me just write it down. Do you still remember the concept of price ceiling? At the very first beginning of this chapter, we talk about price ceiling is for a government to legally establish the maximum amount of their price for a good or service, right? Therefore, for the price ceiling, price ceiling should be maximum. Maximum price can be charged, right? Maximum price can be charged for a good or service. And it could have, when the government imposed the price control, it could have two outcomes, okay? So it has two possible outcomes. The first one outcome is this price control, the price control works. The price control works, which means now when the price control works, it will change the market outcome, okay? Change the market outcome. It will change the market outcome. And then if we change the market outcome, we will say, in this case, we can change the market outcome. So this will be the binding price control. Okay. It could also has a second possible outcome that the price control doesn't work. Doesn't work, which means market markets can still go back to the equilibrium. In this case, if the price control, this type of policy doesn't work, okay, then the markets can still go back to equilibrium. And in this case, we would like to say this policy is not binding. Not binding. Okay, so these are the two possible outcome of price control. And I would like to show you what binding or not binding price control policy from graph. Okay, so in this chapter, we will use graph frequently. So let's look at this case. I will use the graph, okay? And still remember, price ceiling. Price ceiling should be the maximum price that the goods or services can be charged. So look at this graph. Okay, so this is the price. This is Q, this is P. Okay, so this is P, this is Q. And then I'll write it down, okay? Demand curve, supply curve. They intersect at one point, okay? So this point will be $800 will be the equilibrium, right? And then 300 units will be needed. Now, if we assume the government set up a price ceiling at this level, 1,000, okay? So if government set up a price ceiling at this level, please, in this chapter, okay, when we talk about price control, remember to draw a horizontal line across demand curve and supply curve, okay? So this is the, let's see. So this is the supply curve. Please draw a horizontal line across the price control, Okay, so this is the price control. So price control is the price ceiling, right? So I just write the price ceiling. It will be easier for us to track it. So price ceiling should be the maximum of the rent that the government can, that the apartment owner can charge, right? So I would like to say from here, all the price above the price ceiling, all the price above price ceiling, illegal, right? Because price ceiling should be the maximum price that the apartment can charge. Below, below the price ceiling, it's legal, right? So just mark those points. And then we would like to analyze if this 1,000 price ceiling, $1,000 for the price ceiling of the rent would be binding or non-binding. Okay, so the question here, because we notice when the government imposed the price control, it will have two outcomes, right? So the question here is if this $1,000 price control, price ceiling, is binding or not binding. So binding or non-binding, when we talk about binding means it will change the market outcome, right? So market outcome will change. And non-binding means it will go back to equilibrium, right? Then how can we analyze? Go back to check the price setting. Here, you can notice when government imposed this price control, we draw a horizontal line, right? And then corresponding, we will have point A on demand curve. So we have quantity demand equal 200, right? Which means 200 apartments will be rented. Then point B on the supply curve here. So we have quantity supply equal 400. So when the rents reach $1,000, 400 apartments will be available in the markets. So what happens in this case? It will result in surplus, right? And then the surplus here will equal QS subtract QB equal 200, right? 200 apartments will be the extra apartments in the markets. So when the market face surplus, what will happen? The apartment owners, they can lower the rents, right? So for the apartment owners, it can lower the rents. Lower rents. It can lower the rents, right? And lower the rents, it's legal because $1,000 is the maximum amount of the dollar they can charge for the apartments, right? So now for the apartments, for the apartment owners, they can lower the rents to attract more people to rent the apartments, right? So they can lower the rents, and when they lower the rents, the demand of the apartments will increase. Lower the rent is legal, okay? Then what happens? The market can go back to, so finally, okay, market can go back to equilibrium. Make sense or not? Market can go back to, market can go back to equilibrium, right? So do you think this type of the policy will be effective or not? Even the government imposed the price ceiling at $1,000. However, for the rent, for the apartment owners, they can lower the rents, right? They can lower the rents to attract more people to rent the apartments until the market go back to equilibrium. Therefore, with or without the price ceiling, the market will finally go back to equilibrium. Then we would like to say for this type of the price ceiling, it's non-binding. For this type of the price ceiling, it's non-binding. So if the price ceiling larger than equilibrium price, if the price ceiling here, because the equilibrium price is 800, right? And if the price ceiling is set up at $1,000, which is larger than equilibrium price, then the price ceiling will be non-binding. Okay, will be non-binding. Nothing will happen. Nothing will happen at the end because the market will still go back to equilibrium. Okay, so this will be the first example if the price ceiling set up at $1,000. So let's go back to our slides. So in our slides, I mentioned that $1,000 will be the price ceiling, right? So above $1,000 is illegal. However, below $1,000, they are legal price. Above is illegal, okay? Therefore, price setting above the equilibrium price actually is not binding, has no impact on market outcome as we just analyzed because the market can still go back to equilibrium. Understand? Now let's look at another case. So in this case, government can set up a different price ceiling to help the low income people. It's a little bit hard to erase those markers on this learning glasses, so it takes some time. And thank you for your patience. All right, so in the second case, still okay. This is the price, this is the quantity, demand, supply. Okay, and this will be the equilibrium price at $800. Now the government was set up. This is what we already analyzed, okay? So the price can goes down when the price sitting above the equilibrium price is not binding, has no effect on market outcome because there are renters, okay? Always the apartment owners, they can still try to lower the rents to attract more people to rent the apartments, right? Therefore, we like to say the price selling above equilibrium price is not binding. All right, now we would like to say this is the new case, okay? The government set up the price ceiling at $500, okay? So this will be the new price, new rent level, okay? $500. Remember, please draw a horizontal line across it, the whole graph, okay? So this will be the price ceiling. Any rent charged above $500 illegal. Any price, any rent charge above $500 illegal, and any price charge lower $500, it's legal. Okay. So when you draw a horizontal line across the whole graph, it will have two intersection points. Okay. So point A here, you can see is from the supply curve, right? So we will have the supply curve here. This will be, we have the supply, 200 units of the apartments will be available in the markets if the rent, maximum rent can be charged at $500. And then this point B here will be the points from the demand curve, right? So, so you can see the demand for the apartments will be $500, 500 units. Then our question here is, if this 500 price ceiling, okay, will be binding or not binding? This is our question, okay? This is our question. If it's binding or not binding. So you can see binding means it will change the market outcome, right? So from here we have when the price setting set up at $500, we have a quantity demand equal 400 units, right? And the quantity supply equal 200 units. Therefore, it will result in shortage, right? The shortage here will equal QD subtract QS equal 200 units, right? And do you think at this level, can the apartment owners charge higher than $500? Of course not, because the government already set up $500 is the maximum amount of the rent that the owners can charge for their apartments, right? Therefore, under this case, cannot apartment owner, okay? Apartment owners cannot charge higher than they cannot charge higher than $500, right? Therefore, this shortage would always exist. Shortage will always exist. And then it changed the market outcome because the market cannot go back to equilibrium. So it will exist. Shortage exists. Market cannot go back to equilibrium. Okay, so I say market cannot go back to the equilibrium. Therefore, we would like to say this type of the price control is binding. It's binding. Understand? All right. Now we would like to say from this example, if the price ceiling set up less than equilibrium price, then it's a binding price ceiling. Okay, it's a binding price control. Understand? It's a binding price control because it will change the market outcome. It will result in shortage. So the ceiling is binding, is a binding constraint if is less than equilibrium price and it will result in shortage. Understand? Okay, so let's look at one example. So in this example, okay, it asks, okay, if there is a 180 price ceiling on a textbook, then what would be the disequilibrium amount? So if you encounter this type of the question in a practice question or in the quizzes or in the homework assignments, what you need to do first, when you have this type of the graph, first please find out equilibrium price. Please find out equilibrium price. So in this case, can you tell me what the equilibrium price is? So we will see the equilibrium price is 120, right? 120 is the equilibrium price. So here we have the equilibrium price is 120. And now the price ceiling is 180. The price ceiling is 180, which is larger than the equilibrium price 120. So this price ceiling should be not binding, right? As we just analyzed. If it's not binding, then there should be no surplus, no shortage, because if the price setting is not binding, the markets will still go back to equilibrium. Understand? Okay. So for the price setting, I will make a small summarize here. Okay. For the price setting, as far as we know, it is the maximum amount that for a goods or services, right? The maximum amount can be charged for a good and services, and if the price setting less than equilibrium price, then is a binding constraint. Okay, it's a binding constraint and which will result in shortage. Which will result in shortage. okay, which will be result in shortage. However, if for the price selling larger than equilibrium price, then there will be a non-binding constraint. The market will still go back to equilibrium. Understand? So this is the summary for the price setting. If it is larger than equilibrium price, then it's a non-binding constraint. If it's less than equilibrium price, then it's a binding constraint, but it will result in shortage. Okay? Now let's look at a case study in the price control. Price control mostly we're using rent control. Okay? So the price ceiling on the apartments or housing or actually the goal here, okay, or the purpose here will try to help the low income renter to find affordable apartments, okay, to find affordable places to live. However, it will result in shortage, right? So it will also bring some unintended consequences. So some unintended consequences, including it will decrease in long-term investment in the building of the new units because those apartment owners they notice the maximum amount they can charge were still under the equilibrium price, so they might reluctant to offer more apartments in the market, right? So it will have the also maybe reduce in the quality of the apartments. The apartment owners probably they were not put more to maintain their apartments, right? And the units were hard to find. Okay, so those are some unintended consequences related to the rent control or the price control, especially for price selling. Now let's look at the price floor. So do you remember when we talk about price floor? What is price floor? So price floor, according to the definition, it should be the lowest or the minimum price for a good or services, right? So for the price floor, it will be the minimum. It will be the minimum price for a good or service. So this is the definition of price floor legally to establish the minimum price for a good or services. And why or who do you think might be lobby for the price floor? Who might lobby for the price floor? Price floor could be the lowest price you can charge for the goods or services. So most of the time, the suppliers, right, or the agricultural producers, they were lobby for the price floor. So price floor is very common in the agricultural markets. The producer of their products, okay, units that represents for labor force because they were lobby for the minimum wage. So here we will use a minimum wage for our example. This is a very typical example of price floor. Uh, After your graduation, you might work, right? Or sometimes these days you might work part time or full time. So remember to check that your hourly wage should be at least higher. Okay, should be at least equal or higher than the minimum wage. So in the minimum wage, it will be the lowest hourly wages that the firm may legally pay for their workers. And then minimum wage is a very important example for price floor. Think about now, just change a little bit. You in the labor market, are you a supplier or are you a demander? In the labor markets, people like us, like me, like you, actually we are supplier of our labor, right? So you need to think about now for the minimum wage, who is the supplier and who is the buyer? In the labor markets, people like us, actually we are the supplier of the labor, right? Firms and corporations, they are the buyer of the labor force. And this is the labor wage, this is the minimum wage happens in Oregon. So you can see in the big Portland area, okay, the minimum wage will be nearly $14.75 per hour. Okay, so this is the minimum wage. And then in Corvallis, in LBCC, in Corvallis, in Albany, the minimum wage will be $13. But then $13.50. Okay, $13.50. So if you work part time or full time, you need to make sure that your hourly wage at least higher than these levels. Okay. So in the supply and demand frame for the labor markets, okay, we should understand that consumers like us, okay, we are the suppliers of the labor. Firms and corporations actually are the demander of the labor. So here you need to switch the role a little bit. And in the labor markets, okay, we always put W, okay, the wage on horizontal axis, and L represents labor, okay, on the horizontal axis, okay. So this is the graph it looks like. The graph looks like this. We will put L on the vertical axis. Oh, so W on vertical axis represents for wage, and L on horizontal axis represents for the labor. And the demand curve is still downward sloping, and this will be the supply curve. Okay, so this is also similar to our demand and supply curve in the in the goods market. So here is the demand curve and supply curve. Okay, you can see very similar to the one that I draw here shows the demand and supply in the labor markets. And here will be the equilibrium wage level. Okay, so equilibrium wage level will be at $6. Okay, it will be the $6. And at this equilibrium wage level, 50 labor's units will be available in the markets. Okay, so this is the equilibrium wage and equilibrium labor. So here, let's see, if there are markets without the government intervening, what will happen? So, for example, if now the wage level is at $3, do you think this wage level will be a stable wage level or not? So if at $3, you can see from this graph, please remember to draw a horizontal line across, okay, across the whole graph. Then you can see we have this is point 0.8 on the demand, on the supply curve, okay, on the supply curve. So that will be only 30, okay? And the point B on the demand curve will be 70. So when the wages just $3, only 30 people would like to offer their labors, right? So we have the quantity supply equal 30. However, firms and corporations would like to hire more people, right? So it will result in shortage. So the shortage here will equal 70, subtract 30 equal 40, right? So this will be the shortage in the markets. So when the labor markets have shortage, what happens? Firms and corporations, they might increase their wages to attract more workers, right? So we will notice this $3 here will be not stable level because firms and corporations, they will increase the wages, right? They will increase the wages to attract more worker, okay? To attract more workers, which will reduce the shortage. And then finally, the markets can go back to equilibrium. The markets can go back to equilibrium if the wages can increase to $6. So what I just say, the market force, demand and supply, if there is no government intervening, the market force from demand and supply, it will increase this wages level, current wage level into the equilibrium wages. Okay, so this is one case. Okay, so if the market price is lower than the equilibrium price and without government intervening, market forces would go back to equilibrium. However, if now the current wage level is at $12, what happens? At $12, you can see there are more people would like to offer their labor force in the markets, right? However, firms and corporations might think the labor cost is higher, so they will hire fewer people rather than before, right? So similar, please draw a horizontal line across $12, and then you will see there are there are only 30 people will be hired if the current wage level is at $12. However, there are 70 people who would like to offer their labors, which means the market now will have a surplus, right? And when the market has a labor surplus, what will happen? The labor cost, or not labor cost, the wages will goes down, right? The wages goes down, and then it will make the firms and corporations find more motivated to hire more workers if the wages goes down. Therefore, $12 is also not a stable point because the market demand and supply will force the $12 decrease to the equilibrium price at $6. So you can see this part is very similar to the apartments. If there is no government intervene, okay, if there is no government intervene, the market demand and supply actually can work together finally to bring the market back to the equilibrium, okay, back to the equilibrium. However, if now the government comes in, now this part will have the third party, right? We will no longer has buyers and sellers, we also have the government. So government, in order to protect workers, they might impose the minimum wage, okay? The government might impose the minimum wage. So minimum wage, very similar to the price ceiling. It can also has two outcomes, okay? So there are two possible outcomes. The one outcome will be, okay, the price floor, the minimum wage doesn't work. This policy doesn't work. The market will still go back to equilibrium, okay? And this is what we call the price floor is not binding. And another one is the price floor is a binding constraint, which means it will change the market outcome. And then the minimum wage, this policy does work, okay? So let's analyze it. In this case, okay, this is W, this is L, demand, supply, and this is the equilibrium wage level at $6, okay? And then we assume now government impose a price floor at $3, and then we try to analyze if the $3 is binding or non-binding constraint. So this is $3. The question, this $3 here, please remember, draw a horizontal line and then mark this one as price floor. So the question here is if the $3 is binding or not binding price floor. Is a binding or non binding price floor. Okay, so when you draw a horizontal line across the $3, price floor is the minimum price, right? So any price above $3 legal, right? Because this is the minimum price you can charge. So any price above $3 legal and any price below $3 illegal. Okay, any price below $3 illegal. So look at this graph. When you draw a horizontal line across the whole graph, actually, we can result in 2 points, right? Point 8 is on the supply curve, 30, okay? So which means if the price floor is set at $3, only 30 people would like to offer their labor in the market. However, $3 is a very low price cost or labor cost, so demand will become 70, okay? Firms and corporations would like to hire 70 people. However, only 30 people would like to offer their labor. Therefore, it will result in shortage. So when the labor force face shortage, what happens? Firms and corporations, they can increase their wage level, right? Because $3 is the minimum wage. And now we can say firms can increase wage level, right? Firms can increase the wage level to hire more worker, right? They can increase the wage level to hire more workers, and wage will increase the $3 right? Which can increase to $3 because this is legal. They can increase to $3 until the market go back to $6. Okay. Therefore, finally, okay, shortage will decrease, right? Finally, we would like to say shortage, labor shortage will decrease, shortage will decrease, and what happens when shortage will decrease? It will finally go back to equilibrium. So we would like to say the $3 setting here, okay, the price floor setting less than equilibrium price actually is not binding. Actually, is not binding because the market will still go back to equilibrium, right? So this is what we say when the market price is set. So when the price floor is set at $3, which is less than equilibrium price, it's not binding. Okay, it's not binding. So this type of a policy will not affect the market at the end. So from this graph, you can see if the market price set, if the price floor set at $3, all the price above $3, they are legal price. All the price below $3, they are illegal price. And anyway, firms can increase the wage level to hire more workers, right? And it will reduce the shortage and finally make this market go back to equilibrium. So we would like to say the price floor below equilibrium price is not binding, has no impact on the market outcome. Understand? Now let's look at another case. In this case, you can see the government set up a different price floor, okay? And the price floor now is above the equilibrium price. All right. So let's see. In this case, okay, WL demand supply. Okay, so this is the equilibrium price. Okay, still at $6. And now the government set up the price floor at $7.25. Okay, so here is the new price floor, $7.25. Remember, draw a horizontal line across the whole graph. Mark this one as price floor. Okay, all the price above this price floor is legal. Okay, all the price above $7.25, they are okay because this is the minimum price can charge for labor. All the price below $7.25, they're illegal. Okay, then when you draw a graph across, when you draw a horizontal line across the whole graph, please remember to mark this as point A, and point A is from the demand curve, right? 30. And point B here is on the supply curve, 70. So similar. Our question here is $7.25 as a price floor will be binding or non-binding? Binding or not binding? This will be our question, right? So what you analyze? You can write out at $7.25, we have only firms and corporations will only hire 30 people, right? However, as now the wage increase, right? So there are more people would like to offer their jobs, right? Would like to join the labor market. It will result in surplus. And the surplus here will equal 70 subtract 30 equal 40, right? My question here is, under the price floor, even the market has surplus. Is it okay for firms and corporations to offer the wages lower than $7.25? It is not okay, right? Because $7.25 is the minimum wages that the firms and corporations should pay for the workers, right? Therefore, even the markets now face the surplus. Even the market now face the surplus. Firms and corporations, they cannot lower their wages level. So even if face the surplus, firms cannot lower wages, right? Cannot lower wages because $7.25 should be the minimum wages. Should be the minimum wages. Therefore, surplus will still exist. Surplus still exists, and the market outcome changes. Markets cannot go back to equilibrium, so market outcome changes. Market outcome changes. Understand? Therefore, we would like to say if the price floor set at $7.25, which is larger than the equilibrium price, and this will be binding constraint. This is the binding constraint. Understand? This is a binding constraint. So for price floor, if it is larger than equilibrium price, then that should be a binding constraint. All right. Look at this one. $7. $7.25 is the price floor. All the price above $7.25, they are legal. And all the price below $7.25, they are illegal, right? And in this case, we would like to say the price floor is a binding constraint. The price floor is a binding constraint if the price floor is larger than equilibrium price. Understand? So now we finish two price control policies. We also talk about when the price control policies will be binding or not binding. Okay, so for the minimum wages, okay, it will also have some unintended consequences. As far as we talk about, it will result in a surplus, right, in the labor markets. So what type of the unintended consequences could be resulted by the minimum wage? Let's see. It will decrease the quantity demand for labor. Of course, because now the labor costs increase. So firms and corporations, they don't want to hire as many workers as before. So it will decrease in quantity demand of labor. And also increase the quantity supply of the labor, which will result in unemployment. Okay? Firms, they might replacing the low-skilled jobs with capital, if possible. So firms and corporations, they might would like to invest in some like robots to replace the workers. Okay? And firms might relocate to other countries with lower cost labor cost. Okay? And it will shorten the hours for workers. Okay, so those are some unintended consequences comes from the minimum wages law. Okay, and some good things for minimum wages because it has a minimum wages law, and then in order to encourage people to pursue for a job with higher wages, and then firms and corporations, even for our local government, the federal government, they offer more job training and free job training program, okay, for workers, and which will try to help them to become more competitive in the labor markets. So for the minimum wage, okay, politically, okay. So for a minimum wage in politics, raising a non-binding wage level caring and seems caring about the workers, but it is non-binding. Economically, as far as we know, raising a non-binding wage floor actually has no impact on the market outcome. So states with the highest minimum wage, states with highest minimum wage, I mean, for the binding minimum wage, always has the higher unemployment rate than other states. So Washington, Oregon, California, these three states, we can notice from the unemployment data, those three states actually has higher unemployment rather than the other states, which the minimum wage will be lower. So $7.25 is the federal minimum wage, right? But in Oregon, as far as I show you, the minimum wage is $13.50. And in Portland, the minimum wage will be much higher, right? So those three states, like Washington, Oregon, California, it has a much higher minimum wage than this federal minimum wage level, which means those three states actually suffered a higher unemployment rate. All right. So this should be one of the most important graph in this chapter. Okay. So remember to know this graph. Okay. I will show you this graph here. Let me erase this part first. Sometimes I hope we can have a better erasers can get rid of those markers easily. However, we try many methods and then it seems it doesn't work. Okay, so let's see the most important graph in this chapter. This is P, this is Q, demand curve, supply curve. Okay, and this is the equilibrium. So look at what I draw here. I will draw a graph. So this will be our binding price ceiling. Okay, this is the binding price ceiling. Remember, okay, binding price ceiling. And binding price ceiling here is lower than equilibrium price. Lower than equilibrium price. This is the binding price floor. And binding price floor is larger than equilibrium price. Okay, so remember this should be one of the most important graph in this chapter, and then I think this graph summarizes what we have learned. For binding price floor above equilibrium price, and then it will result in, it will change the market outcome, right? So it will result in surplus. For the binding price ceiling below the equilibrium price, it will result in shortage. Okay, so this graph, very, very important, very, very important. Okay, you can see for binding price ceiling below the equilibrium price, for binding price floor above equilibrium price. All right, now it also has some practice questions in this chapter, and then for those practice questions, I think you can just go through the lecture slides. And I also explain those practice questions in the actual credits video. Okay, so you can referring to the actual credits video for the rest of the lecture slides for chapter 6. So thank you so much and hope you can understand the price control policies, including price floor and price ceiling. Bye bye.